killing satellites. The Sun is constantly spewing out plasma that can travel at 1 million miles per hour, reaching the Earth very quickly and potentially causing a great deal of damage. The enormous amount of iron in the center of Earth acts as a magnet, generating magnetic fields. These fields protect the Earth. Scientists monitor all this activity to better understand how it works. The Earth's magnetic fields come the closest to the surface at the north and south poles, where we can see the aurora.
A team of researchers, led by physicist Robin Milan of Dartmouth College, have been launching research balloons from Antarctica, each standing more than 8 stories tall. These mammoth balloons ride circumpolar winds around the South Pole, floating as much as 40 kilometers high as they look for signs that electrons are penetrating the atmosphere overhead.
Nuclear-pumped radiation belts. A nuke is sent into near space and detonated. During a generic nuclear detonation, most radiation shoots out into space. Only a small portion is directed toward the ground. Nuclear-pumped radiation belts are illustrated in this NASA animation. The huge amount of nuclear radiation comes in through the back door, not from the sun. The radiation belts can last years. Another NASA animation illustrates what can happen to satellites when they encounter high-energy electrons that are trapped in the magnetic fields around Earth. Starfish Prime wiped out nearly every satellite in orbit at the time. This happens if the weapon is detonated at the right altitude and latitude, like Starfish Prime. Hawaii's location makes it a very tempting target. In a few minutes we'll see how bad it could be. Several years ago, NASA did this animation of satellites orbiting Earth. It still serves the purpose of showing where and what kinds of satellites are at risk. These are the geosynchronous satellites. Some of their functions are TV and radio broadcasting. Now we pass through Middle Earth orbit satellites. GPS satellites orbit in this area. The layer of white dots close to the Earth are simply called low Earth orbit satellites. These are the ones we depend on for weather, resource mapping, and navigation picture mapping on our smartphones. This simulated nuclear burst demonstrates how nuclear warhead detonations manage to kill satellites using a second and much more direct method. In space, all the instantaneous radiation from the burst rushes out at the speed of light. The shockwave containing high-temperature plasma is moving at 5 million miles per hour. The darkened area on planet Earth is in shadow from the horizon effect. Most of the dots representing satellites are darkened to indicate they are unaffected. The orange-red ellipse is the footprint of the EMP effect from the nuclear burst. More detail about that in a few minutes. This burst is centered over the continental United States, but it's easy to see large parts of Canada and Mexico are affected. A radiation belt would not form from a burst over the continental USA because the latitude is too close to the North Pole. There will only be a fraction of LEO satellites within the nuclear burst line of sight, but it will be deadly to the nearby satellites. Watching a second time, we'll assume a satellite contains a nuclear warhead, detonates, and causes all the same destruction. In fact, a country could put an entire nuclear arsenal into orbit and deliver an unstoppable nuclear blow to any point on Earth without warning. I promise not to put nukes in my satellites. All we have is a treaty signed by many countries. There is no means of enforcing compliance or doing any verification. These are the 10 chapters in this video series. I will continue to release more videos and video series on this complex subject.